Grace and peace to you from Jesus Christ, the one who opened his arms to all. Amen. Well, friends, as Pastor Brock said, I'm back. Did you miss me? Wonderful. Of course you did. Well, I am back from my month of sabbatical, and I've already, as they say, jumped into the deep end. There was no time for easing into it, and I had to fully commit immediately. Now, as a swimmer, this image took me back to many a cold, early summer morning for outdoor swim practice. Standing by the pool, reluctant to dive in because we all knew just how cold that water was going to be. Now, our coaches would be very patient. They would give us time to mentally prepare ourselves for warm-ups and for, of course, that cold water. But the time would come when they told us, you just have to commit. Once you dive in, you're going to be fine. But that commitment part was the hardest. Taking that first step toward the pool. And that's what Jesus is talking about today in our story from Luke. Commitment. He's talking about total commitment, complete dedication to Jesus, really following him and his teachings. And wouldn't you know it, Jesus uses some strong language here to describe what following him might look like. This is classic Jesus, friends. And if we're honest, it's hard for us to hear. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Hate Jesus? Anybody else confused here? Right, because throughout Jesus' ministry, it's been about love. Didn't you say earlier in Luke 10:27, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Or Luke 6:27, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. How could hate now be a part of following you, Jesus? I want you to imagine yourself in those crowds. You have heard Jesus just talk about hate. What would your reaction be? Yeah, that's my guy. I'm going to go ahead and hate the people I love most here on this planet and follow you. Is that what you would do? Or maybe your reaction is more like mine. Excuse me, sir. I'm not really interested in hating the people I love most in this world. Thanks, but no thanks, Jesus. I read a lot this week about how these words of hating other people really is just hyperbole. It's complete exaggeration. Jesus doesn't really mean it, they say. And friends, I want to be in that camp. I want to just put my fingers in my ears and sing la 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 and ignore what Jesus is saying. I would love to just put my head in the sand and keep going, doing my life nice, comfortable, following Jesus. So is this an exaggeration? A little yes, and a little no. Yeah, it's an exaggeration for two reasons. One, Jesus is really trying to get the crowd's attention here, and our attention. We can probably all think of a time when someone said something outlandish, harsh, to get people's attention. Two, as I mentioned before, hate really is off-brand for Jesus. It goes against that whole love your neighbor thing. However, no, this is not exaggeration in the sense that Jesus wants the crowds and us to understand the level of commitment we might need to take in order to truly, wholeheartedly follow Jesus. Jesus does not want to sugarcoat what discipleship might look like. Difficult choices might lie ahead for us. Uncomfortable conversations could be in our future. People might hate us for following Jesus. Our commitment to Jesus might look like hate to other people. So what do I mean by that? Dr. Amy Jill Levine, my favorite Jewish a scholar of the New Testament, explains that total dedication to Jesus might appear like hate. You see, friends, for those crowds following Jesus, choosing Jesus first might make their families feel hated. Because in this time, friends, following a traveling preacher who was calling for radical love of all people wasn't a safe choice. It was tearing families apart. And as Jesus says to us today, following him might include carrying a cross, that instrument the Romans used to kill their enemies. Following Jesus might mean death. So as people started to follow Jesus, not every family was super supportive of this choice. Families became divided, and it felt like hate. So what does that mean for us? For us here and now in this time and place. I kept thinking about Miss Rachel this week. Do you know who she is? Some of you are nodding your heads. Well, if you have a toddler in your life, you probably do. There she is. Her sweet, kind voice has been the soundtrack of our lives for the better part of the last 2 years. Miss Rachel is the reason why we listen to Hop Little Bunnies multiple times a day. Miss Rachel is a YouTube phenomenon. In 2019, she started the YouTube channel Songs for Littles, using classic children's songs alongside original songs she wrote with her husband Aaron for early childhood language development. However, in recent months, Ms. Rachel has been in the news for other reasons. As an early childhood educator, Ms. Rachel cares deeply for the health and safety of children. So she is outspoken about the starvation and suffering of the children of Gaza because of the conflict with Israel. And because of her advocacy on behalf of Palestinian children, she has been criticized and bullied on the internet. But Miss Rachel, she remains firm in her advocacy and her morals, saying, quote, "It is sad to take someone's dedication and love for all children and try and make that wrong. It is not wrong. It is wonderful to be an advocate for all children. And deeply caring for a group of children who are in an emergency situation, who are starving, doesn't mean you don't care equally for all children. That's false, and that's painful." Miss Rachel leans heavily on her faith and her own following of Jesus. This week she posted on Instagram, "The God I know doesn't exclude anyone." And at the risk of sounding like I am contradicting myself, I think Miss Rachel is right here. The God I know doesn't exclude anyone. I don't think Jesus is asking us to hate another person in our story for today. Rather, friends, what's most important here is how we expand God's family, how we widen the family of God, how we include more people in God's family. Because at the end of the day, love is stronger than hate. I have always told people that I want to err on the side of love. The God I know doesn't ask me to hate another person. The God I know calls me to love. God calls you to love. Friends, our commitment to Jesus will never be enough. And I'm here standing today to say that that's okay. Because Jesus' commitment to us is greater. Jesus' dedication to you is stronger. For you, Jesus went to the cross. For all people, Jesus went to the cross. And friends, on the cross, Jesus opened his arms to all. For all. No one is excluded. Amen.